The Ice Age was not a mere historical moment, or a severe winter storm that lasted a few days and then ended. It was a geological epoch deeply rooted in time, stretching for tens of thousands of years, and it represented one of the most violent existential challenges humanity faced on its long journey across this planet. It was a world radically different from our own, a world harsh in its cold, vast in its silence, and frightening in its tyranny, yet also a world filled with opportunities for survival, for those who possessed the intelligence and will to seize them. To understand how our ancestors survived, we must first understand the nature of the world they were forced to confront. During the peak of the last ice age, known as the last glacial maximum, approximately 26,000 to 20,000 years ago, the Earth was a majestic and terrifying spectacle. The ice sheets were not just a white blanket covering high mountain peaks. They were massive, incredibly thick blocks of ice covering vast areas of the planet. A huge sheet covered most of northern Europe, extending from the British Isles across Scandinavia to Siberia. In North America, the Laurentide ice sheet covered most of Canada and the northern part of the United States, reaching into what are now states like Wisconsin and New York. The thickness of these sheets reached several kilometers in some areas, weighing down the continents themselves with immense weight. This enormous quantity of frozen water, pulled from the world's oceans, had a direct and stunning result: a massive drop in global sea levels to about 120 meters lower than today. This revealed vast expanses of land that were once ocean floor, creating what are known as land bridges. The most famous of these was undoubtedly the Bering Land Bridge, which connected Siberia to Alaska, becoming the route taken by humans and other creatures to migrate from Asia to the Americas for the first time in history. Similarly, many islands became connected to the mainland. The North Sea, for example, transformed into a vast plain known as Doggerland. But what was the climate like? The cold was not the only challenge. Harshness and dryness were the main characteristics. Average temperatures were much lower than today, especially in inland and continental areas. Winters were unbearably long and dark, with the Arctic ice extending far south. Snow was not dominant everywhere. In many regions, particularly in the south and on the edges of the ice sheets, an extremely dry climate prevailed. Powerful winds blowing across open, treeless plains, katabatic winds, coldly descending from the ice sheets, stripped the land of any fragile vegetation and intensified the feeling of cold, creating conditions akin to frostburn. Within this harsh vastness, the landscape was not monotonous. It was dominated by what is known as the Mammoth Steppe, or tundra steppe. It was not a barren tundra as we know it today, but a unique, surprisingly productive ecosystem consisting of vast plains of tough grasses, mosses, and herbaceous plants, capable of withstanding cold and drought. These plains fed the largest and greatest animals of that era, the megafauna. Here, the woolly mammoth roamed with its majesty, with its thick fur and long, curved tusks. It was not just a game animal, but a source of life and death, a symbol of that age. Alongside it was the woolly rhinoceros, with its thick, furry coat and long horn, the giant bison, larger than its descendants today. The Irish elk with its majestic antlers spanning over 3 meters, cave lions, giant brown bears, and fearsome, dire wolves. In this world of giants and ice, humans were not alone. They were just one species among many, and not necessarily the strongest or the fastest. Their size was small compared to some of the predators around them, and their bodies, not covered in thick fur, seemed weak against the storms of that time. The challenge was not merely finding food, it was comprehensive. How do you warm your body on a night when it's minus 30 degrees Celsius? How do you shelter from face-cutting winds? How do you hunt a massive animal weighing tons without being crushed? How do you find water when most of it is frozen? How do you maintain the morale of a human group under conditions that seem like divine punishment? This frozen world, with its harshness, vastness, and resources, is the main character in our story of survival. It was not just an enemy to be defeated, but a harsh school that forced humans to learn its lessons or die. This environment shaped every aspect of human life, from tool design to the shape of dwellings, from the nature of social bonds to the features of spiritual beliefs. Understanding this frozen gauntlet is the first key to decoding human ingenuity that not only managed to survive within this gauntlet, but eventually managed to remove it, building a new world from the melting ice, carrying with it the lessons, memories, and skills that shaped the humans we know today. Survival in the world of ice was not merely a matter of finding food and shelter. It was a daily battle against an invisible yet deadly enemy, the bitter cold. Death from hypothermia was a constant threat in every moment, in every breath of frozen air, and in every endless night. Humans had no choice but to become masters of the arts of heating and protection, ingeniously inventing everything that could keep the spark of life burning within their bodies. Clothing was the first line of defense, but it was not just primitive coverings. They were complex and finely crafted armor against the cruelty of nature. Humans of that era did not rely on animal skins randomly. They developed an advanced system for processing and transforming them into high-quality fur and leather that provided warmth and protection. The process began with the hunt itself, where the thick fur of cold-adapted animals was selected, such as Arctic foxes, wild rabbits, wolves, and especially musk oxen, which possessed an exceptionally thick undercoat. After obtaining the skin, a primitive but highly effective tanning process began. They used sharp stone tools to meticulously scrape off remaining flesh and fat from the skin, then treated it in various ways to make it more flexible and water-resistant. Sometimes they used animal fats themselves, or smoked the skin over a low fire to achieve this purpose. But the real innovation that completely changed the game was the invention of the needle. This needle was not simple. It was a masterpiece of Stone Age artistry. Needles were initially made from bone, then evolved to be crafted from mammoth tusk ivory, a strong and flexible material that could be precisely carved. These needles contained fine holes, eyes, drilled using very sharp flint tools. The presence of an eye in the needle meant they could use animal tendons or strong plant fibers as thread. This great invention was not just a sewing tool. It was a revolution in the concept of clothing. Because the needle enabled them to sew, this opened up new horizons previously unavailable. They no longer needed to wrap skins loosely around their bodies, leaving gaps for cold air to enter. Now, they could cut, shape, and stitch skins together to create garments that fit the body amazingly well. They invented the concept of what we now call layering. The inner layer was made of soft, insulating fur, like rabbit or fox fur, to trap warm air near the body. The outer layer was made of more durable and water-resistant leathers, like deer or mammoth hide, to protect against wind and snow. This multi-layered design was identical in philosophy to modern mountaineering and polar exploration clothing. Clothing was not just a covering for the torso, it covered every part of the body. They made head coverings, hoods, with fur rims to protect the face, often equipped with additional fur pieces to cover the neck and back. They developed sophisticated gloves, which were not just bags for the hand, but contained separately stitched fingers, allowing freedom of movement while maintaining warmth. They also made high boots of tanned leather and fur, with thick linings of dry grass or moss to absorb moisture and provide additional insulation against the frozen ground. Every element was designed to seal any gap that cold could penetrate. This clothing was invaluable for several reasons. First, its thermal insulation efficiency was very high, allowing the body to maintain its heat without expending significant extra energy. Second, it was water and wind resistant, protecting against the elements that increase the feeling of cold. Third, its flexibility and fit gave humans the freedom of movement for hunting, gathering, and traveling, which was vital for survival. Fourth, its function was not only protective but also social and cultural. Decorations and engravings on clothing, which appeared in some artistic artifacts, likely indicated the individual's identity, tribe, or status. In short, clothing transformed from a basic necessity into an advanced technology, reflecting deep intelligence in understanding materials, physics, and the environment. It was the protective armor that enabled humans to leave their shelter for long hours, hunt prey across frozen plains, and traverse harsh lands. This innovation was no less important than the discovery of fire or the manufacture of tools. It was a victory over cold, a decisive step in humanity's long journey to control a merciless glacial world. Through this precise sewing, humans did not just stitch pieces of leather together. They stitched hope and warmth into the fabric of their fragile existence in the face of an unforgiving ice age. Shelter was not merely a place to sleep. It was humanity's first fortress against the harshness of nature. In a world of howling winds and temperatures beyond endurance, finding adequate refuge was a matter of life and death. Humans of the Ice Age did not rely on a single type of dwelling, but demonstrated remarkable flexibility in utilizing the resources provided by the environment, from natural caves to handcrafted homes. Caves were the primary natural refuge. Humans chose them with great care, as not every cave was suitable for habitation. They sought out caves with small, easily defensible entrances that faced south to receive maximum sunlight during the day. They ventured deep inside to check for dryness and the absence of water leaks, ensuring sufficient ventilation without strong drafts. Caves offered immediate protection from wind, snow, and predators, but they were not available everywhere. In regions devoid of caves, humans excelled at constructing artificial dwellings. They used available building materials with astonishing ingenuity. On open plains where trees were scarce, they turned to using mammoth bones for construction. These bones formed a strong framework for the shelter. They began by placing massive mammoth skulls as a foundation, then arranged thigh bones, ribs, and long tusks in a circular or oval pattern, sometimes reaching up to 5 meters in diameter. The bone framework was covered with the hides of large animals, such as bison, mammoth, or woolly rhinoceros skins. These hides were tanned and carefully stitched together to form a single sturdy cover. To secure this covering, they used large stones or additional bones to weigh down the edges and prevent winds from tearing them away. In some regions, they covered the hides with a layer of mud or wet grass, that froze solid in the intense cold, becoming like cement. Inside the dwelling, the interior design revealed deep intelligence. The hearth always occupied the center of the home. It was not just a source of warmth, but the heart of daily life. Around it, individuals gathered for heating, cooking, and socializing. The hearth's location was carefully chosen to be away from direct ventilation openings, but close enough to allow smoke to escape. They built stone edges around the fire to retain heat and prevent sparks from spreading. The dwelling's floor was lined with layers of straw, hides, and fur. In some advanced shelters, they dug depressions in the cave or hut floor for sitting and sleeping areas, helping to trap warm air around their bodies. Internal walls were sometimes covered with additional hides to insulate against the cold emanating from rocks or ice. The arts of thermal insulation were well known. They stuffed gaps between bones in manufactured shelters with moss, dry grass, and available fur. In snowy regions, some groups built dwellings from compacted snow in dome shapes, where snow provided excellent insulation when used correctly. These shelters were not just sleeping places, but centers of social life. Around the central fire, tasks were distributed, stories were told, the young were educated, and important decisions were made. The distribution of spaces within the shelter was organized according to social relationships, with areas allocated for the immediate family, guests, and a special place for tribal elders. This diversity in housing solutions demonstrates human ingenuity and adaptability. From warm caves to tents made of bones and hides, from snow dwellings to stone-built huts, all testify to the will to survive and creative innovation. Shelter was not just a roof protecting from rain and snow. It was a symbol of safety, stability, and identity in a merciless, frozen world. Hunting during the Ice Age was not merely a means of obtaining food, but a refined art, combining deep knowledge of nature, exceptional physical skill, and integrated group cooperation. In a harsh world dominated by massive predatory animals, hunting represented an existential challenge, requiring the highest degrees of ingenuity and planning. Ice Age hunters relied on advanced strategies, reflecting profound understanding of animal behavior and nature. Hunting was not a random process, but based on careful observation of herd movements, study of migration patterns, and knowledge of breeding seasons. Hunters would track prey over long distances, reading subtle signs on the ground, from footprints to animal droppings, from broken grasses to damaged tree branches. Hunting tools evolved remarkably during this period. Hunters created arrow and spearheads from precisely sharpened flint, with sharp edges capable of penetrating thick animal hides. These points were made using precise pressure technique, where the maker used tools of bone or antler to remove small stone flakes to obtain exceptionally sharp cutting edges. The most important innovation was developing spear-throwing tools that increased the spear's power and speed when launched. This clever device enabled hunters to throw spears with greater force and accuracy while maintaining a safe distance from dangerous animals. They were made from bone or antler and featured specially carved ends to secure the spear's base. Group hunting was the foundation of hunting strategies. A single hunter could not face a massive animal like a mammoth or woolly rhinoceros. Groups consisted of specialized hunters, each with a specific role. Some handled guidance and reconnaissance, others formed the main attack line, while others served as reserves to block escape routes. Hunters used advanced techniques to catch large prey. One such technique was directing herds toward prepared hunting grounds, such as narrow valleys or natural slopes, where animals became trapped and vulnerable. Sometimes they dug large traps covered with branches and grass, then chased animals toward them. The hunting process didn't end with killing the prey, but began a new phase equally important. Meat was quickly cut and processed before attracting other predators. Every part of the animal was used: meat for food, hide for clothing and shelter, bones for tools and weapons, tendons for threads, and antlers for containers and tools. Knowledge of hunting seasons was an essential part of this culture. Hunters knew the best times to pursue each type of animal, when to leave them for breeding, and where to find seasonal feeding areas. This knowledge, passed down through generations, was as valuable as practical hunting skills themselves. Hunting rituals blended with spiritual beliefs. Hunters believed every animal had a spirit, and they gave thanks to the spirit that allowed the hunt. These practices reflect deep understanding of natural balance and respect for the creatures that were their source of life. In this way, hunting transformed from merely a food acquisition process into a complex system of knowledge, skill, and spiritual cooperation. A successful hunt meant life for the community, while failure could mean hunger and death. Through these advanced practices, humans not only survived, but thrived in the Ice Age, building a rich cultural heritage whose secrets we continue to discover today. Human survival during the Ice Age didn't rely solely on hunting. Our ancestors mastered the gathering of plant resources that formed a fundamental pillar of their nutritional system. Their sophisticated knowledge of edible plants, herbs, and vegetation represented a perfected science passed down through generations, providing diverse food sources that complemented their meat-based diet. Ice Age humans developed precise skills in distinguishing beneficial plant species from harmful or toxic ones. Women typically handled gathering duties, possessing expert knowledge of plant locations and ripening seasons. They collected tuberous roots hidden beneath the ground, which served as crucial sources of starch and energy. These roots required deep digging using special stone tools and thorough washing before consumption. Seasonal berries and wild fruits provided vital sugars and vitamins. During the brief summer months, communities gathered large quantities of blueberries, raspberries, and wild strawberries, preserving them through various methods for use during cold months. Some fruits were sun-dried or smoked over fire to create dried fruit-like provisions that could be stored for extended periods. Wild nuts and seeds served as rich sources of fats and proteins. In autumn, groups collected substantial amounts of walnuts, hazelnuts, and wild almonds, storing them in leather containers or tightly woven baskets. These nuts were cracked using special stones to extract their nutritious kernels, adding important diversity to their diet. Plant knowledge extended beyond nutrition to medicinal uses. Humans developed advanced understanding of medicinal plants for treating diseases and injuries. Some herbs served as anti-inflammatories, others as pain relievers, while some aided wound healing. This medical knowledge was transmitted from elders to younger generations through oral traditions and practical applications. Wild mushroom gathering formed another important aspect of this knowledge. Humans distinguished between edible and poisonous varieties, knowing the best collection times after rainfall. Some mushrooms were dried and preserved for use as food flavorings during winter months. Plants also served in creating natural dyes. Certain roots, berries, and leaves provided various colors used to decorate clothing, cave paintings, and jewelry. Red colors were extracted from iron oxide-rich rocks and soils, while black pigments came from vegetable charcoal. Dry grasses and mosses served as thermal insulation materials in dwellings. They were placed between animal skins in walls or used as flooring in shelters. These materials helped maintain warmth and absorb moisture inside homes. Humans developed innovative storage and preservation methods. Some roots were stored in pits lined with leather and kept underground where temperatures remained stable. Some fruits were preserved in clay containers or leather bags with added natural salt or smoke for preservation. Knowledge of primitive agricultural seasons existed in basic form. Humans observed how plants grew from seeds, and in some less cold areas practiced early forms of agriculture by scattering seeds near dwellings and caring for growing plants. This advanced plant knowledge wasn't merely survival skills, but represented a complete cultural system. Stories and myths described plant properties, and special rituals accompanied the gathering of sacred plants. Knowledge of plant locations and collection times constituted collective wealth that tribes preserved and transmitted across generations. Through this deep understanding of plants and natural resources, humans maintained a balanced diet, supported their health with medicinal herbs, and enriched their cultural life using plants in art and rituals. This gathering wisdom represented another facet of successful adaptation to harsh Ice Age conditions, demonstrating human intelligence in utilizing all available natural resources for comprehensive survival. Fire represented humanity's greatest discovery during the Ice Age, serving as the fundamental cornerstone that enabled our ancestors to challenge the most extreme climatic conditions and ensure survival. Fire was not merely a source of warmth, but represented the heart of daily life and the center of innovations and developments that shaped humanity's future. Mastering fire ignition and maintenance presented significant challenges, requiring special skills and precise knowledge. Humans developed multiple techniques for igniting fire, most importantly, the flint striking method, where they used flintstone struck against another iron-rich stone to produce strong sparks. These sparks fell onto highly flammable materials like dry grass, dried fungi, or wood shavings. The friction method also existed, involving rotating a dry wooden stick rapidly between palms against a dry wooden base until sufficient heat was generated to ignite fire. Maintaining burning fire represented a greater challenge than ignition. Humans developed innovative methods to keep embers burning for extended periods. They used specific types of slow-burning wood like oak or elm, which burned slowly and produced embers lasting for hours. During travel, they carried burning embers in clay containers or large shells filled with ash, enabling them to transport fire from place to place. Fire represented the center of social life. Families gathered around central hearths for warmth, food preparation, and storytelling. Fire provided safety and protection from predators that feared approaching flame and smoke. During long cold nights, fire served as the only light source, enabling humans to continue activities after sunset. Fire revolutionized food preparation methods. Cooking over fire killed bacteria and parasites in meat, making food safer for consumption. Cooking also broke down tough fibers in meats and plants, making them easier to digest and allowing better nutrient absorption. This development improved public health and increased survival rates. Fire also enabled longer food preservation. Smoking and drying using fire were crucial techniques humans developed. Meats and fish were smoked over fire to transform them into jerky-like provisions that could be stored for months. Fire was also used to dry fruits, herbs, and nuts for long-term preservation. In tool manufacturing, fire served as an essential instrument. It was used to harden spear points and shape wood, with precise thermal management, transforming raw materials through fire's application. Smoke from fire had important uses too. It preserved hides and fur through smoking, making them more water-resistant and mold-proof. Smoke also repelled insects and mosquitoes from dwellings, providing protection against insect-borne diseases. Humans developed advanced techniques for controlling fire temperature. By using different fuel types and arranging firewood in specific ways, they could produce varying temperatures suitable for diverse purposes. Low heat for slow cooking, high heat for material processing, and medium heat for heating and lighting. Fire also served as an essential element in rituals and beliefs. Considered sacred across numerous cultures, fire became central to celebrations and religious ceremonies. Humans believed fire possessed purifying and spiritual powers, using it in rites of passage and seasonal celebrations. Through mastering fire control, humans transformed hostile environments into habitable spaces. Fire enabled expansion into previously uninhabitable regions, adaptation to changing climates, and development of new technologies. Fire was the spark that ignited human evolution, the innovation that enabled humans not merely to survive the Ice Age, but to thrive and build civilization's foundations. It was the fire of life that illuminated humanity's path from darkness to light, demonstrating our species' unique ability to harness nature's elements for survival and progress. No single human could face the challenges of nature's harshness alone during the Ice Age. True strength resided not in the individual, but in the community. Organized and cohesive social life served as humanity's secret weapon that enabled not just survival, but prosperity under exceptional circumstances. Our ancestors understood that cooperation and solidarity were the keys to success in a merciless world. The tribe formed the fundamental social unit, a group of individuals connected by blood, marriage, and shared interests. Tribe sizes ranged from dozens to a few hundred members, large enough to provide security and workforce, yet small enough for mobility and resource utilization. Each tribe maintained its territory, with members possessing deep knowledge of its geographical details and resources. Labor division within the tribe was precisely organized, with each member having a clear role contributing to the group's survival. Men typically specialized in hunting and defense, while women focused on gathering, cooking, child-rearing, and clothing production. However, this division wasn't rigid. During difficult times, everyone worked together to ensure the tribe's survival. Elders constituted the tribe's precious treasure, serving as repositories of knowledge, wisdom, and experience. They preserved detailed memories of migration routes, weather changes, resource locations, and hunting and survival techniques. Their wisdom was transmitted to younger generations through stories and tales told around evening fires. Children learned survival skills from an early age. They played with miniature tools and imitated adults in hunting and gathering practices. The learning process was direct and practical, with youngsters accompanying adults on hunting and gathering trips, learning through observation and practice. Important tribal decisions were made collectively, where elders and experienced members gathered for consultation and decision-making. There were no absolute leaders. Natural leaders emerged based on their wisdom, courage, and capabilities. Decisions were typically reached through consensus, strengthening social cohesion. Rituals and traditions played crucial roles in reinforcing social bonds. Celebrations were held after successful hunts, during full moons, or with changing seasons. These rituals strengthened the sense of belonging and renewed the tribe's spiritual energy. The tribe provided a primitive social welfare system. The sick, injured, and elderly who couldn't work were cared for. Food and resources were distributed fairly, ensuring no one starved while others had plenty. This social safety net proved crucial for survival under harsh conditions. Relations between tribes followed specific rules and customs. There were neutral hunting zones, trade routes for exchanging goods, and alliances for mutual defense against dangers. These broader social networks allowed knowledge, resources, and genetic exchange between different groups. Language and communication developed complexity, matching social life needs. Precise terminology existed for describing animal species, plants, natural phenomena, and geographical features. Stories and myths transmitted values, history, and knowledge from generation to generation. Arts represented an important aspect of social life. Wall engravings, small sculptures, music, and dance all served as means of expressing collective identity, beliefs, and emotions. These artistic practices strengthened social cohesion and provided emotional outlets under difficult living conditions. The marriage and kinship system was complex and organized. Rules determined permissible marriage partners, helping build alliances between families and different groups. These complex relationship networks provided additional safety nets during times of hardship. During crises like food shortages or natural disasters, the tribe demonstrated ultimate solidarity. Everyone worked together, shared resources, and provided mutual moral support. This unity often made the difference between survival and extinction. Through this sophisticated social structure, Ice Age humans transformed individual weakness into collective strength. The tribe served as the shield protecting its members, the network supporting them, and the collective mind finding solutions to impossible challenges. Our ancestors understood that humans thrive not in isolation, but in community. And this wisdom enabled them to conquer the Ice Age and lay civilization's foundations. The social fabric they wove demonstrated that human survival depends not just on physical adaptation, but on our unique capacity for cooperation, empathy, and cultural transmission. Survival during the Ice Age wasn't merely a struggle for food and shelter, but also a journey in search of meaning and beauty within a harsh, challenging world. Through this era, humans expressed their inner world and spiritual aspirations through astonishing artistic forms and deep beliefs, leaving behind testaments to their intellectual complexity and creative capacity despite difficult conditions. Caves served as humanity's first theaters of art, where humans transformed walls into magnificent canvases, recording their worldview. In cave darkness, using primitive lamps fueled by animal fats, artists painted with exceptional skill the animals that shared their world. Wild horses with full muscles, massive bison with curved horns, majestic mammoths with long tusks. These representations weren't mere reality recordings, but carried deep symbolic meanings, possibly part of magical rituals to ensure hunting success or honor animal spirits. Artists used natural materials in their creations, preparing colors from mineral oxides and colored earths, red and yellow from iron oxide, black from vegetable charcoal, white from calcareous clay. They mixed these powders with animal fats or water to create colored paste. They used primitive brushes of animal hair or chewed-end twigs, or even sprayed pigment from their mouths over hands on walls to create special effects. Art wasn't confined to walls, but manifested in small sculptures carried during travels. They carved small statues of voluptuous women from ivory and bone, possibly symbolizing fertility and abundance, or representing the great mother goddess who gives life. They also carved miniature animals with exquisite precision, possibly serving as protective talismans or educational tools. Music and dance formed integral parts of spiritual life. They created primitive musical instruments from hollow bird bones that produced sounds when blown, or woods that rang when struck. These instruments accompanied rituals and celebrations, where individuals danced in leather and feather costumes, mimicking animal movements in rituals expressing connection with the spirit world. Humans developed a complex system of spiritual beliefs that helped them interpret the surrounding world and overcome fears. They believed in hidden forces controlling nature and spirits inhabiting animals, plants, mountains, and rivers. They attempted to appease these forces through rituals and offerings, seeking hunting luck and protection from disasters. The dead were buried with special rituals, indicating belief in afterlife. Tools, weapons, and jewelry were placed with the deceased, possibly for use in the other world. In some graves, the body was sprinkled with red pigment, symbolizing life and blood, perhaps in attempts to restore life. Dreams and visions held important places in the spiritual world. Considered windows to the spirit realm, they served as sources of inspiration and prophecy. Shamans, the tribe's wise persons, interpreted these visions and led rituals, sometimes using hallucinogenic substances to reach altered consciousness states. Spiritual beliefs connected to seasonal cycles and natural phenomena. They celebrated spring's arrival that melted ice and brought life, summer that ripened fruits, autumn that brought great hunting time, and winter that required patience and resource conservation. These celebrations recharged the group's spiritual energy and renewed their connection to life's cycles. Art served as a means of transmitting knowledge across generations. On cave walls, they recorded hunting techniques, animal characteristics, and star maps. Through stories and myths, they transmitted values of cooperation, courage, and wisdom. Through symbols and signs, they preserved knowledge of sacred places and migration routes. This artistic and spiritual expression wasn't luxury, but psychological survival necessity. Facing cold, hunger, and danger, art and spirituality provided psychological refuge, strengthened social cohesion, and offered hope and strength to continue struggling. Beauty and meaning served as weapons against cruelty and despair. Through these creations, we see that Ice Age humans weren't merely beings struggling for physical survival, but thinkers, artists, and spiritual beings seeking truth and creating beauty, documenting their experience and searching for their place in the universe. These creations made them human and enabled them not only to survive the Ice Age, but to lay foundations for human civilization that would follow. They understood that humans don't live by bread alone, but by beauty, meaning, and hope. This spiritual dimension ultimately distinguished humanity from other species and paved the way for cultural development that would transform the world.